In this video, we're going to learn how to solve one-step equations. In this situation, we have x plus 2 is equal to 7, where x represents a number that we don't know. X could be the number 5, it could be the number 9, it could be the number 72. I have no idea. I need to figure out what that missing number is. Now, you've probably done this in elementary school, only back then maybe they did something like this where there was an unknown number where we're going to add 2 and it's going to equal 7, and you have to figure out, okay, what is that question mark? What is that missing number? And in this case, I can tell that it is 5 because 5 plus 2 is 7. Now, the only difference now is instead of using question marks, we like to use letters. So if you ever see an X, a Y, an A, or a B, or any letter in the alphabet, that represents a number that we do not know, and we have to try and figure out what it is. Now, how do we figure out what X could be in this case? We have to show our work in a certain way. But once you understand the rules, it's not that difficult. The first thing you have to keep in mind is this equal sign is very important. So the equal sign kind of divides the equation in half. And when I'm talking about this equation, I'm going to be talking about everything to the left of the equal sign and everything to the right of the equal sign. So in your mind, you have to think of this equal sign kind of dividing the page in half. And you'll hear me talk about the left side and the right side. So right now on the left side of the equal sign, we have x plus 2. On the right side, we have 7. Now, how do we solve for x? What we really want to do is we want to get x all by itself on the left side, so we can say x is equal to something. So right now we have this number 2 here. I want to try and get rid of that 2. And if I can get rid of that, then the x will be by itself. Now, how do I get rid of a plus 2? Well, the trick in solving equations is always do the opposite. So if this is plus 2, I have to do the opposite, which is minus 2. Now, why would I do this? Well, if you have plus 2 and then minus 2, together that equals 0. So it's like it disappears. And these will cancel out. Plus 2 and minus 2 is 0. But what I do to one side of the equal sign, I have to do to the other. So that's one rule that we have to follow. Now I'm going to clean this up a little bit. When we're solving equations, we always want to work downwards. You can't be showing your calculations all over the place. So on the left side, the 2 is gone. So all I have is an x is equal to, and 7 minus 2 I know is 5. So this is how I show my work properly in math. And I know that I'm right because I can always go back to the original equation. If I'm saying x is equal to 5, well, 5 plus 2 is 7. So I'm happy with that. Let's look at another one. So in this one, we have 6 is equal to x minus 3. In this situation, x is on the right side. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter if it's on the left side or the right side. We want to get it by itself. We want x is equal to something. So right now I got to see, are there numbers around x that I want to get rid of? Here I have x minus 3. I want to get rid of that minus 3. And again, you always do the opposite to get rid of it. So the opposite of minus 3 is plus 3. And then minus 3 and plus 3 together, they make 0, so they kind of disappear. They cancel out. Now, what I do to the one side of the equal sign, I have to do to the other side. So let's take a look. What do we have to the left of our equal sign? 6 plus 3 is 9. And that's equal to what's on the right side? Well, we only have that x left over because the 3 canceled out. And I have 9 is equal to x, which is the correct answer. But in math, we usually put the variable, the letter, on the left side. So I'm going to switch the variable to the left side and switch the 9 to the other side. Here's another equation. 3x is equal to 12. Now, the first thing you have to realize is you have to know what 3x actually means. This is actually 3 times x. Whenever you see a number and a letter right next to each other, that's always multiplication. And the reason we write it like this is if we tried to show that multiplication sign with an x, it would look really funny because which one's the multiplication? Is it a variable? We wouldn't know. So we just kind of skip the whole multiplication sign and just write 3x. So that is 3 times x. Now, we want to get x by itself, so we need to get rid of this 3. How would we get rid of this 3? We got to do the opposite. Well, if this is 3 times x, the opposite of times, or multiplication, is division. So in this case, I'm going to divide by 3. And I have 3 divided by 3, and these will cancel out. Now, what you do to one side of the equal sign, you have to do to the other. So I'm going to divide the 12 by 3 as well. Now, what do I have left over? Well, 3 divided by 3 is actually 1. So you could write a 1, and then we have the x left over, and we would have 1x on the left side. But in math, we usually say, hey, if it's 1x, we don't even write the 1. We just kind of ignore it, because x is the same as 1x. So that's why we just say the 3's kind of cancel out and disappear. On the right side, we have 12 divided by 3, which is 4. Now let's go back to our original equation. 3 times x, we're saying x is 4, so 3 times 4 is 12. Yeah, that works. So I know this is correct. And here's another equation. So we need to get x by itself, but we have this 2 on the same side. They're both on the left side. I need x as the only thing on one side of the equation sign. So I need to get rid of this 2. Well, this is really, I know we can look at this as a fraction, but this is the same as saying x divided by 2. Now, what's the opposite of divide? Multiplication. So for me to get rid of this, I'm going to multiply by 2. Now, one mistake I see people make, it's a little thing, but you shouldn't do it, is when they try and multiply by 2, sometimes they multiply by 2 down here, but you should be writing the 2 up on top. Okay, so don't write it down there like that. So I'm multiplying by 2. Now, if you are really comfortable with fractions, you know if there's a 2 on top and a 2 on the bottom, they cancel out. It's almost like division. So there's a 2 on top and a 2 on the bottom. They cancel out from each other. Now, if I multiply by 2 on the left side, I have to also multiply by 2 on the right side. That's one of the rules with solving equations. Now, what do we have left over? On the left side, the 2's canceled, so I only have an x all by itself. I'm happy with that. That's the whole point of doing this. Is equal to, and on the right side, I have 10 times 2, which is 20. Now, is that the right answer? Maybe looking at it at first, I don't know, but we can always check this by taking that 20 and plugging it back in for x in our original equation. So our original equation was x divided by 2 is equal to 10. Well, if we're saying x is 20, we can go 20 divided by 2 is equal to 10. And we know that's correct.